All right, this is the Big Friendly Swim podcast because I'm big and I'm friendly, and we're gonna get right into things. So if you just introduce yourself and sort of tell people like who you are and what you do.
Yeah. By the way, big and friendly is relative, right? Both of those can be. What am I supposed to do? I'm Todd Desorbo. I'm the head coach of the University of Virginia swimming and diving team. Is that it? Did you need more?
As much as you wanted to say. So we're just gonna get right into the questions then. So your first season at UVA, the women placed 12th and the men didn't score. 6 years later, the women have won 3 straight team titles, like fairly dominantly by like over 100 points each time. And the men's team has seen a lot of improvement as well. They scored 78 points this year, and Matt King notably made the World Championship team. So can you sort of compare your first season with the team to this most recent season, and like what goals did you have for the team when you first came on, and then how have those goals progressed now?
Yeah. I think it's hard, I think, to compare mainly because I can't remember the first year. I have, I have the worst memory in history. I can't remember what happened yesterday. I have this weird, like, if I see something written, I can remember it, but if somebody talks to me, I can't remember it at all. But, from a, like, when I was even considering coming to Virginia, and taking the job, I was confident that the University of Virginia as an institution was the type of place that, could attract some of the best student athletes in the country, particularly in our sport in swimming and diving. Virginia, I was at NC State prior to coming to UVA, and so I was really familiar with Virginia because we're in the same conference and we competed against each other. And just familiar with the university and the team. And, to me, it was, back then I felt like Virginia was a similar type of place to Cal Berkeley as far as like, academic rankings go, as far as, swimming and diving potential. And certainly Cal has been a traditional powerhouse and had always been good and was significantly better than UVA was at the time. But I felt like UVA was a type of place that could get to that. And I was confident that we could get to that. So ultimately, in that first year, I don't know that I necessarily had goals for the team in that first year as much as it was just trying to have a successful transition and have the team have fun and, buy into what we were doing and trust what we were doing and work hard at it, and enjoy it while we were doing it. And if they were able to do that, we would be successful. And, I think that first year was really successful. And, I know you mentioned the women were 12th and the men didn't score at NCAAs, but, and with all the success that our women have had, I think our men have actually improved more. Because the men went from not scoring a point at NCAAs to being top 10 in the country in just 2 years. And I believe that was the first time in NCAA history that a men's team had ever done that. And obviously the men have been pretty consistent from there. But, I don't know that I ever set out to have the goals of winning, national titles, or, I don't know that I set out to have the goals to be where we are today as a program. It was more just, we have a coaching staff that works really hard, and we have a coaching staff that likes to have fun, and we all are really passionate and really enjoy what we do. And so the hope is that we would just get better and better every year. Like, ultimately, that's been our goal every year, and that's what we talk about as a team. So even after that first year, it was, hey, we're going into the second year, let's just try to be better. If every individual gets a little bit better, that means the team gets better. Can we score more points at ACCs? Can we score more points at NCAAs than we did last year? And if we do that, we're going to progress and get better and better and better. And that's kind of been the goal. The goal has never been to, win a national championship. Although that's, a dream back then. It was, a dream, and it would be a lot of fun to do that. But the goal has really just been to, can we get better? Can we get better year to year? What can we do as coaches to help you get better? How can I be better as a coach? And what can you do to be better? And hopefully we're doing those things together, in tandem. And, you know, the program moves forward really, really quickly when you're doing those things.
It's a it's it's funny. The answer you gave me is pretty similar to what Braden Holloway, the coach at NC State, was telling me about. Sort of not necessarily having like tangible goals, I guess, for the team when you first join it, but just trying to make everybody have a good time and enjoy themselves. And happy swimmers are fast swimmers typically, and just seeing where things end up.
Yeah, I mean, and Brady and I worked together for 6 years. The 6 years before I came here, and I mean, we as a staff, and he and I in particular, had a ton of fun together. And I think that when the staff is having fun together and enjoying each other, you get on deck and you're having fun together, and the team sees that, and so it just becomes an environment and an atmosphere. And you know, for me as a head coach now, making hiring decisions, it's always been my hiring decisions. For better or for worse, I don't know, but the first thing I've always thought about is, would I like to hang out with this person? Would I enjoy, going, just going and hanging out after work or after a meet, and just, and can we have a good time together? Are we going to enjoy being around each other a lot, right? On the pool deck, in the office, because at the end of the day, I want to have fun. And I feel like when this isn't fun for me, I'm out. I'm done. But what makes it fun is the people that you're around, right? The people that you surround yourself with, your coaching staff, as well as your athletes. I think that, the athletes that are attracted to our program, you know, and the athletes that end up coming to our program are the ones who are probably most attracted to our personalities and are going to fit in best with our personalities.
So, building off of that success that the team has had this past couple of years, it's landed you on some international teams as a coach. So I'm curious if you can draw any lines between your experiences coaching internationally for Team USA and how that's helped you on a collegiate or a national level. And then if you have any favorite memories as well from coaching internationally these past few years.
um, yeah, I mean, I think that certainly, um, when you have athletes that make those teams, because, I've been fortunate to be on the Olympic staff in 21, and then a world championship staff last year. But it's not because of me, it's because of the athletes, right? Like, they're the ones doing the work. They're the ones that are accomplishing the feat to make those teams. And, I'm riding their coattails to get onto that staff because of them, which is pretty cool. And it certainly helps recruiting when you have athletes that are, performing at that level, because the best of the best athletes want to be Olympians, and they want to make world championships. And so if you have a program that's consistently putting people on those teams, and, the top recruits are at least going to consider you. But, and certainly, you know, as far as coaching day to day goes, I'm not sure I learn a ton from that perspective. When I'm on those types of trips, I think the big thing that I learn on those trips is how to really work with people, and help people and support people that you don't support and work with every day, because those staffs are pretty small. You've got 6 or 8 coaches, and you've got 50 swimmers plus, and so you're gonna be assigned. There are gonna be athletes that are assigned to you as a coach that aren't from your team, and that you've never worked with. And so, you know, being able to build a relationship really quickly with them, trying to figure out what they need, how you can help them has been, I think that's been beneficial for me from a day-to-day perspective, to be able to come back and, you know, talk to incoming freshmen or new transfers that I haven't coached before, helps, understand how to build a relationship with them a little bit more quickly, and figure them out a little bit more, quickly as to what they need and how you can support them. I think I'd say, as far as favorite moments or favorite parts of those trips, I think there's two parts, right? I think one is, um, watching, Team USA be really successful is, and that's depends on the event, right? And it's event to event, so it's pretty exciting. But seeing any of the team medal or accomplish their goals, but and more specifically, our athletes that from UVA that we coach directly and watching them, I think that probably one of the most memorable moments for me, the last couple of years was at the Olympics. Yeah, well, this is kind of twofold, right? Like Kate Douglas and Alice Walsh, first of all, making the U.S. Olympic team that year, and the way they did it, going 1-2 at trials in 200 IM, and being just 0.02, two 100s apart, and third place was also two 100s back. So it's probably potentially one of the closest races in the history of Olympic trials between three people. Um, Basically, two 100s or four 100s separating, making the team and not making the team. And ultimately, that's every swimmer's dream, is to just make the U.S. team. But then to go beyond that and then go to the Olympics and then have them get second and third together was, I actually, it's funny because when they hit the wall, as coaches, we're not out on deck. So we're not close to them during the race. They keep the deck clear for TV purposes and stuff. And so, after the race, I was back in the team room, and it takes the swimmers forever to get back to the team room because they've got to walk all over the place and they've got to do media. And it takes them, sometimes 20 minutes to get back to the team area. And so you kind of, as a coach, have a lot of time to reflect on a race before they even get back to you. Whereas in a normal race, in a normal meet, they're over to us in like 30 seconds, and you don't have time to you're just like, hey, go warm down. Let me process the race. We'll talk afterwards. It's a little bit different at the Olympics or these world championships. You've got more time. And I sat down and I got teary eyed a little bit, and because of what they accomplished, and the national team director, Lindsay Mintenko, came over to me and she's like, are you all right? She's like, are you mad, or are those happy tears? And I was like, they're happy tears. I could care less. And she was worried I was upset because they didn't win. They got second and third. And I was like, yeah, I could care less if they won or not. The fact that both of them got to medal and got on the podium together in the same race is mind blowing to me. And as a coach, that's the first time that I've ever been a part of something like that. So, that was obviously really memorable. Outside of that, it's the camaraderie of the coaches, and being around, last summer at World Championships in Budapest, I was the head coach. And so I was able, I was had the fortunate ability to be able to choose the staff. And you don't just choose random people, right? Like you choose people that have athletes on the team, usually. But we just had Anthony Nessie and I worked together. He was the head coach of the men, I was head coach of the women. And we worked, instead of it being the U.S. women's team and U.S. men's team, we kind of just collaborated, and we tried to make it just one big team. And we had a great staff, and Anthony and I, we actually roomed together in Tokyo. So we'd gotten to know each other a lot the year before, and we just had a really, really good time with the staff outside of the competitions. It was a lot of fun. I got to know, some of the coaches that I knew of and I was friendly with, but I didn't really, really know. Caro Capitani at Texas, Bill at Ohio State, Greg Meehan at Stanford. Spent a lot of time with them. And just really got to know them much better for the first time. And it was real, and now I have really great relationship with them and talk to them all the time. And I think that's like the athletes make these great relationships and they make friends on these trips. We do too as coaches. So it's pretty cool.
Sorry. It's like, I'm just thinking about it, like, being in the room with like that much coaching talent and being able to work with people like that and become friends with people like that. I'm jealous of being able to just learn from those people and just spread the knowledge and share the wealth of like, how can we best set up this team?
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, and I don't even to this day, I hold all of them on a pedestal, right? Like Eddie Reese, and when we're at the Olympics, it's Bob Bowman and Jack Bowerly and, just all these just historically phenomenal coaches. And I'm there with them and I'm like, I don't belong here. Like, I am nowhere near their level. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'll just go along for the ride and we'll see how it goes.
So, from a coaching perspective, how did the pandemic shift your focus, if at all, like on a team level and on a personal level? Like, what were some of the conversations you had with the team when you knew, okay, hey, this might be going a little bit more south than we initially expected? And then with your athletes who are at a caliber where they had the Olympic team like in their prospects, what were the conversations you had with them about the year delay on trials?
Yeah, so one, it happened so quickly for us. We didn't have, it was like there was no, I mean, there was a little bit of a warning, right? Because, in March of 2020, it was like there was like a 2 week period, right? Where it was like, this is happening, this is shutting down. A couple of days later, it was more and more. So you're kind of like, and for us, it happened. We had been to ACCs that year and had a great meet. And then we were going to leave. We were supposed to leave for NCAA's, in 5 days. But it was like, I kind of just have always taken the approach like, look, we're going to roll with the punches. We're going to deal with whatever comes our way. We're not going to stress about it. We're only going to think about things we can control and we're going to do our best. And that was kind of the approach that year. It just kind of happened so quickly that it wasn't even like, we didn't even have the chance to talk about it because it was literally like a 2 day period where it was like, they may cancel this meet, but I was like, until they do, we're going to keep trucking along. Like we're going to prepare for it. And then it was like all of a sudden the, you know, the plug was pulled and they're like, everybody has to go home today. And it was, I remember the meeting with the guys and the girls that were here training for NCAAs was like the worst meeting ever. I mean, it was the worst meeting ever. You have seniors who their season's over, right? They were planning to go to NCAA. They didn't get that closure, right? Like when you know it's your last meet, you enjoy every moment and you try to get the most out of it. And when you have your last swim, you're like that, you know what's coming typically, right? As a senior. And they all just got chopped, it was done. It was really, really hard. Lots of tears. It was probably one of the worst, not worst, but hardest meetings to have, and not necessarily for me to relay the information because they knew it before we had the meeting, um, but it was just hard to see them and their pain and their emotions. It was wild. And as far as like the Olympics go, for us, at the time we had probably two people with some potential, but I think that like, and that was Paige Madden and Kate Douglas. Kate Douglas was just finishing her freshman year, and I don't like. I think Paige was fairly locked in on trying to make the Olympic team. Kate Douglas was not at all. I don't think at that point in her career she believed she was even close, or I don't know that she believed that she could ever be an Olympian at that point. I told her, when she first got here, that I felt like she could be. I didn't necessarily know or think she would be able to do it in her first year, but I remember, and she'll tell you this too. I sat her down, early on, and I was like, "You can make the Olympic team. It's not going to happen overnight, but you have the ability if you want to do the work to get there." But I think that like, you know, from our perspective, the delay only helped. It only allowed, we didn't have any like seniors that were going to be trying to make it. So, but they were younger, and so the extra year was really actually beneficial to the people that we had. And then Alex Walsh came the next year, so Alex wasn't there. Alex came. She started in 2020, the fall, and then her freshman year was the Olympic year. So I think for us it was beneficial because it just gave them another year to develop and get faster. Um, but I think that what COVID did was just, I think that it helped us understand a little bit more about individuals and what type of training they need, because we probably did less training that year than we've ever done and had as good of a year as we've had you know, since or before. Um, and for me, it's allowed me to, and not so much me because I'm typically this way anyway, but with my staff, I'm like, it allowed them to relax and they're like, if we don't get this extra 1,000 in, or if we don't get this extra 30 minutes in the pool, it's actually going to be okay. And it might actually be better. Um, so, and I think it also allowed people to, and I don't know how many people, made any changes due to this, but for me, like knowing that from March until July or August, most people couldn't swim. That's the longest break most swimmers have ever taken in their lives. And it wasn't a detriment. It was actually a really good thing.
I remember that like 3 month period of like not being able to be in the water and just having time just for myself. And because up until that point, I've been going for the longest time. I think you're right. It was like a positive impact for a lot of people. Just being forced to just, you need to take a break right now. You need to do something else.
Yeah. I loved it. I mean, I hated the pandemic and I didn't enjoy COVID, but I actually really enjoyed the time at home. And just I joke about this, but I realized COVID made me realize I actually don't like people. I don't like big crowds. I don't like I don't, I'm like I was totally fine, and I have my wife and my two children, and that's basically all who I, didn't see anybody else for a couple of months, but like I really didn't mind it. Read a lot that I don't get to do normally. We got a puppy. Like we did a lot of things that of course there was a lot of things we couldn't do that we really enjoy, but got to do some things that maybe we didn't know we enjoyed as well. So it certainly was a difficult and challenging time, but I also think I think it allowed, at least for me, it allowed me to, you know, I guess, I don't know if I want to say re-find or just find myself a little bit. I learned a lot about myself in that 3 month window for sure.
I think that's a positive thing that a lot of people started to take out of it, is just like, this is some time I can spend with my family or work on something for myself and just kind of reevaluate where I'm at and like just enjoy some time for me.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is one that I was pretty excited to talk to you about, and one that a master's coach at the pool that I lifeguard at was like, you need to ask him about this. So can you break down what Triton wear is and how you came to be a part of it, and then how have you utilized it for your athletes? And like, if you have any examples of like how it's been successful in like helping out a specific athlete or like helping out a group of people.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a data analytic device, that collects the data and it's so much data. Just, the simple things like get your time. If you're going 10 100s on 130, it gets your time for every 100. It gets your stroke count for every 100, which are very basic, but it gets very detailed data too, like how much force you produce off the wall, how deep is your push off, how efficient is your push off, just your stroke rate, like it's, how efficient is your stroke, how much force you're producing, like it is a lot of detail. I mean, it's a ton of data and a ton of information. And so, we also have the he's moved on from this position. He's still at UVA, but he used to be the head of the chair of the math department here. And he's still involved with the math and science departments here, but kind of on a much more broader and higher level. I actually I had lunch with him Monday. Dr. Ono, um, on a similar scale to Triton, where he developed a sensor that he can attach to our athletes and does tests with them. And, it's similar stuff, but his is a little bit even more detailed. And we have a underwater camera system that will capture video and still photos, so we can match up inefficiencies from the data's perspective to the pictures. So as a coach, visually, we can see, where the inefficiency is, what the data says. But Tritonware, it does pretty much the same things. And so, but Tritonware, like Dr. Ono for us is a moment in time, right? It's not every day. It's once every 3 months or whatever we want. Like we test however often we want, but it's more like today this is where you're at. These are the things we need to work on. Let's see if we can focus on those for the season, and we'll retest later to see if we're better. Whereas Tritonware is constant. It's every minute of every practice you're getting the feedback, right? And so you can see real time whether they're making these changes or what they're doing, or if they're not making those. I can watch my app on my phone or on an iPad, and if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, I can tell them immediately that they're not, rather than not knowing or waiting. And so we've used it for I only have like 4 or 5 units. I don't do it with the whole team. I don't have the bandwidth to like do it on that range, that broad of a range. I needed to be with like a couple of people so I can just focus on, keep things simple and just focus on a couple of people with a couple of things. Like this year, I'm switching it up. We use it a lot in the summer of 22, from spring through to summer. And a lot of it had to do with, it was all my sprint guys here at UVA. And so we had them on it, and it had a lot to do with work. And interestingly enough, they're all terrible at underwater dolphin kicking. So a lot of the focus that summer was underwater dolphin kicking, but not necessarily like make them do more underwater dolphin kicks. It's just they were never going to be guys that are going to do. They're not going to be guys that are kicking out to 15 meters. They're guys that are going to do 3 to 5 dolphin kicks, and we just need to make those 3 to 5 dolphin kicks a lot better. So we focused a lot on that with the data, and we also focused a lot on efficient swimming. We did a test set once a week, probably for 50 related speed work. And we use the Tritonware to see if we were getting better week to week on that particular test set. And we want to see that they're getting better with the data points that each individual needs to get better with. But that test set particularly, I wanted to see that they were getting better. Part of that is their time, but it was basically rounds of 425s and a 50, basically all out, no breath. But I gave them a specific kick count and a specific stroke count they had to hit. And so we could see if they were getting better with that. And they actually had an unreal summer. From a sprint and freeze perspective, we had 3 guys who were on the Tritonware, and they all 3 went to nationals and all at summer nationals last summer, and all 3 of them dropped in a lot of time. Most of them were dropping about a second in a 100 free long course. And they dropped, anywhere from a half a second to a second in the 50 free. I know it's not all Tritonware, it's the work, but it's the combination of that, right? Like if we didn't have the Tritonware, maybe we wouldn't have been as good. It's certainly not hurting. This year, where I've transitioned it, I'm having 3 different people use it for 3 entirely different reasons. Claire Curzan, Kate Douglas, and Jack Akins are all going to wear it. And with the ultimate goal for the 3 of them is to make the Olympic team next year. And so we're going to sit down and talk about the things that they need to work on individually in their events, and then have them lock into the data and be checking it, and, making sure that they're doing, like, I'll be checking it as well, but I want them to be locked into it too, to see and know if what we're doing, if the training that we're providing, the practices that we're providing, and the advice that we're providing is beneficial, but also that they are aware and locked into making whatever changes they need to make in order to be, to make those data points better. Because they're already all 3 so fast. Like they're so good that, the small things are what's going to make them better.
So I'm curious if you can talk about, this is more of a specific question about like a specific athlete, but training an athlete like as versatile as somebody like Kate Douglas, like where you've got this person who can swim the 50 free and go like 24 low, and the 200 breaststroke and go 221, and the 100 fly and go 56 low. How do you train for that? Like, can you give some advice to coaches with athletes who are potentially on the same level, or potentially on the same level of versatility, and how you can train for that level of, I guess, versatility and be able to train across such a huge spectrum of events.
Yeah. I haven't necessarily had somebody that versatile. We have others that are versatile, but that like I guess we have had people that are equally versatile, but like that though that combination of events is pretty rare. To be honest with you, personally, I love sprint freestylers that are also sprint breaststrokers. Love them. For whatever reason, I've had a number of those in the past. Although dating all the way back to my days coaching at UNCW, when I was there, the best sprinter was Rob Anderson, and he was a sprint freestyler, breaststroker. And UNCW doesn't often have people make NCAAs, but he made it his senior year in the 100 breast, and also swam the 50 free and was a 19-second 50 freestyler. And I've had a number of people in between him and now. I love it. Like I love that combination. He also was a great butterflyer. And so, like that combination is pretty cool and pretty lethal. It's also fairly rare. I don't know if what we do for Kay Douglas would work for everybody, but I think the cool thing is for somebody like her, the variety of training she gets to do keeps things fresh and it's different every day, right? Like if you swim one stroke, then you're probably not mixing it up all that much. But every day she's focusing on something different. And the way we train, we train when we get going into the season, we train very event specific. So every single practice, at least for the people that I coach, in particular in my group, majority of the practices they're specific to one particular event. So we focus on one event. In this practice, it's all about the 50 free, and that's all you're going to think about, and you're going to try to make yourself as good as possible, today to help that event. And then we'll come back this afternoon, and this afternoon it's all about the 200 breaststroke. All you're focusing on is a 200 breaststroke. So there's no generic training. It's very event specific, and I think that she likes that and she thrives in that. But she, like through the college season, she trained. We have 9 swim practices per week. She did 2 breaststroke workouts a week. She did 2 butterfly workouts a week. She did 150 freestyle workout a week. And it was like, could she do more if she was solely a breaststroker? She'd probably do more breaststroke work. She didn't necessarily need it. So I think that's also, I don't know, I think that's something that's unique to her is, she doesn't necessarily need to be doing it a ton to be really good at it. Will doing more help her? I don't know. I think that if she comes to me and says, I want to solely focus on the 200 breaststroke, then we would probably do more breaststroke training. I don't think it would hurt her. I think it would help. But if she wants to do the 200 breast, the 100 free, the 100 fly, and a 200 IM, then there's only so much we can do, right? You only have so many practices. You don't want to overdo it. So, but with her, she just, at the end of the day, it's like, most often I just ask her what excites you? What do you want to focus on? What event are you like, what's your goal this year? Like, what events do you want to focus on? And what events get you excited? Like, what event do you want to swim the most? And that's what we'll go after, because that's what she'll be most successful at. So, I mean, and I would do that with anybody. I do that with Alex Walsh, Gretchen, we do that, to some degree. She's pretty versatile. Certainly I try to steer them in, or at least maybe get them to think about doing some different things. But ultimately I kind of let them decide, because if it's their decision, it'll be much better.
It's just so interesting that I had to ask. Like, I think this summer might have been like the first time that somebody's had the conundrum of, I have the 200 breaststroke final, and then 20 minutes later I have the 100 freestyle final.
Yeah, it was actually flipped the other way. It was 100 free and then the 200 breast. I think Kate is also a special type of person. Like, she can train that way, and it works for her. She trains sprint for the most part. I don't think there's too many people that can do the 200 IM long course and come home in 29 and train, for the most part, low volume, high intensity sprint. I don't know that everybody, like Kate's, I think, very unique that she thrives in that type of training. She does not like aerobic training. She wants to go fast. Like, she likes to train fast and hard. She doesn't like recovery workout. She doesn't like aerobic training. She just is like, throw me some race pace, let me go. But yeah, I mean, that 100 free 200 breast double was, you know, we knew it was going to be challenging, and knew it was going to be there was a slight concern from her perspective. Like, I know she's capable of handling it. I think she was weary of whether she could handle it or not. But I was really impressed. Even though she got fourth in 100 free, like, I was pretty impressed with how she did, and then how she bounced back and swam that race. But yeah, like, I don't know that, kind of what her and I talked about was like, look, you could medal in both, or you could not medal in both. But I think your goal needs to be try to final in both, because if you do, then you've just done something that nobody's ever done in the history of swimming. And just finaling in those two, probably just making the team in those two events alone has probably never been done. But to final at the World Championships in those two events when they're only 20 minutes apart, you're basically making history, and that's challenging enough. So see if you can do that, and then just see what happens once you get into the final. Because at that point, it's like, it doesn't matter. I mean, you've done something that nobody's ever done. That's pretty cool.
It almost reminds me of like Katinka Hosu or Ryan Lochte, both athletes who were like really versatile and were constantly swimming doubles at the Olympics and World Championships, and just having like back-to-back events and trying to manage that schedule. So I'm curious if you can talk about running a combined program, because it seemed, in at least in my opinion, it's become increasingly more common on a collegiate level to have a combined program. So I'm wondering if you could talk about like some of the benefits of that, and how you think running like separated programs by gender would be different.
Yeah, I mean, I've only coached in combined programs, so I don't know any different. Uh, and I prefer it this way. I mean, I definitely would rather be a part of a combined program. I feel like swimming is the type of sport where the more the merrier. So the more people that are in there doing it together and working hard together, the better. So, and not that I want to have a team of 100 people or anything like that, but having a combined program if you're single gender, typically you're separated, right? So there might be 20 to 25 people swimming at a time, whereas in a combined program, you got 50 plus training all together. It's certainly more chaotic, and it's certainly more to manage. And I can't, like this morning, we had 20 lanes of short course running, all at once. Everybody's doing the same thing. I can't see the person in lane 1 and the person in lane 20. So, but we've got 7 coaches that are, helping to do that. But, I mean, I think more is better, from that perspective. The more people, the merrier. It's like, I don't know if you run, but I run. But like, I would much rather run with another person or with a group of people than by myself, because it just makes the time go by way quicker. And swimming's a sport that, like, it's hard, it's challenging. You don't play swimming, you play football, you play basketball, you play soccer, you don't play swimming. So the more people that are in there with you, supporting you, I think is really, really beneficial. And I think that's a huge benefit to a combined program. And I think that, like, and obviously it's different. Coaching a single gender women's team would be significantly different than coaching a single gender men's team. So I guess there's benefits both ways. I'm sure there's some cons both ways. I don't necessarily know those because I've never coached a single gender team. But I think that I think that the guys add a lot of value just from a personality perspective. They're typically more vocal. They're typically louder. They're typically a lot more willing to fool to themselves and clown around. And I think that helps the environment. I think that helps the girls, to feel like they're having a good time. Um, you know, so, yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's probably more challenging to coach two teams, mainly because of the numbers. The number of you're managing twice as many people, you're managing twice as many athletes, you're managing twice as many coaches on staff. You're recruiting twice as many people every year. So I think it's a lot more time, and a lot more. It's probably more challenging, but like, I love it. I wouldn't want it any other way. You know, it's just like, it's just fun. It's different. It's fun. And I love coaching women and I love coaching men. So I don't know. I think I would really miss one or the other if I was doing single gender.
So, sort of building off of that and going into our last two questions here, being able to manage that amount of athletes with that coaching staff, can you describe your mentality around how many yards you train your swimmers? Because while I was researching questions for this, I came across an interview where we were talking about like having like quality over quantity and not overtraining swimmers and sort of planning out sets by day. So I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to that mentality.
Yeah. I've also, back when I started coaching at UNCW, and I didn't know any better back then, but I had an epiphany at some point along the line there that, the student athletes that would go to a UNCW, and this is 15 years ago, and maybe it's changed between now and then, I don't know. But, we weren't a fully funded program back then. We had 3 scholarships on the women's side and 2 on the men's side. So the vast majority of the team were not coming to swim there. They weren't coming to the university because of a scholarship, and they weren't coming to the university to swim. They were coming to the university to come to the university, and swimming was secondary. And knowing that, once I realized that like they could quit any day and it wouldn't really matter in their life. So they needed to be enjoying it. They needed to have fun. And I also needed to find a way to make them work hard, or harder than they may have, like almost tricked them into working hard. So, and I was coaching sprinters back then too. So it was a little easier from that perspective. But, I went real low volume and real high intensity, and they loved it and they ate it up and they put way more into it. And they got a lot out of it and swam really well. So I realized early on that, if you limit the volume and or you limit the amount of time you're practicing, like, I know that's, now, like if I have a practice, if I tell my team we're only going to practice for an hour and a half, or compared to 2 hours, their effort level is they perform significantly better knowing they only have to go an hour and a half compared to 2 hours. Or if the practice is only an hour, they almost get that sense of urgency towards, okay, I'm only going an hour or I'm only going an hour and a half. I need to be really good. And it's the same thing from a volume perspective. Like, they know that we're not going to do 8,000. We're only going to do 4,000. And because of that 4,000 needs to be damn good. You can't take 10 yards off at all. You can't take 10 seconds off at all. Everything's got to be full tilt. Everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be at the effort that we're asking. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Whereas if you're doing 8,000, you can't go max effort for 8,000. It's just not physically possible. You're going to go at 80% or whatever it is. Whereas we're going at pretty much 100%, all gas, no brakes, every day, every practice. And obviously that doesn't go for all of our groups. But I would say even our upper level aerobic groups don't do as much volume as, your traditional distance program, like your traditional mile or your traditional 4IM and 5 free. And we've had a lot of success. Paige Madden won the mile at NCAAs her senior year and didn't do 1 mile practice the entire year. So I think that as long as you're working really hard at it and you buy into it, you can be really, really successful at it. And it's more fun. Doing less at higher intensity is more fun. And so I think because it's more fun, they're more willing to put way more into it, and they end up getting way more out of it than if we were to do more volume and they didn't put quite as much into it.
You talked about like a partially funded program and sort of the expectations that come with that and the athletes that come with that who necessarily swimming isn't their primary focus, that they're just there to go to school. I swam for my local community college. So it was kind of a similar deal of like, nobody here is here because swimming is the primary thing in their life. Like, we're here to go to school and then also swim. But I think my coaches did a pretty successful job at getting everybody to buy into things and trust the process. And like to give you an example, they took us to like a relay only meet like partway through the season every year. It's like a 4x100 IM relay or a 4x75 relay, and then at the end of the relay, at the end of the meet, they do like a costume relay where everybody has to go like dress up in themed costumes. So I think it's
Yeah.
stuff like that, and just keeping it fresh and fun, like for athletes who are students first and aren't necessarily there just to swim. That helps keep it fresh and exciting, and if anything, can motivate people even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the flip side of that conversation is also that, a lot like at UNCW again, a lot of the people, you know, they're also there because they want to be there. Like they're not there because they're getting a scholarship. They're not there. They didn't come to be, to swim, but they want to be there. They want to swim. And I also think that's, like from a coaching perspective now, from being at a mid-major program that was really really successful to where we're at today here in Virginia, I still kind of take that policy and that process of like my goal is to try to have everybody want to come to practice every day. Certainly, like you're not going to want to be at practice every day. It's hard. You got a lot of other things going on in your life, but the goal is to make it. It's the balance and that that line of making it fun, but not so much that's going to take away from the work that you need to do, but also not doing so much work that's just not fun anymore, right? Like I want people to want to come to practice. So and the more people on your team that want to come to practice day to day, the better the environment is, the better the atmosphere is, and the more they're going to put into it, and the more they're going to get out of it. So the hope is that it's not people aren't coming here and or coming to practice because they have to or because they're on scholarship. But I do think that those people who do it because they want to do it and love it, certainly they're the hardest workers and they get the most out of it.
I definitely can agree with that, and I think it's a pretty interesting look at. There's definitely no like statistic anywhere, but it'd be interesting to see which coaches of like major Division 1 schools now used to be coaches of like D3, D2, or like mid-major schools, or even just like club teams, and how their mentalities as coaches has sort of helped change the landscape of like collegiate swimming. Because I feel like 20 years ago, it used to be more of a, all right, we're going to swim 10,000 yards and we're going to focus and do this, this, and this. And it was less about the happiness of the swimmers and more about how much work you can put out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, and I also believe there's a lot of ways to get from point A to point B. And, and I realized when I was in Tokyo at the Olympics that I don't do things like as far as all the other coaches that were there, I do things very differently than any of them. But and not that they all do things the same way either. I just realized that almost every coach there does things, maybe some things similarly, but everybody does things differently, and a lot of different ways work. At the end of the day, it's you know the athletes buy in, and then to me, the more fun they're having, the more successful they're going to be. So, you know, and like I want to have fun, like that's a big part of it too, right? Like I want to go on deck and have fun, and what's fun to me is going fast, and swimming fast in practice and swimming at a high level and at high speed in practice. So I enjoy that. So that's what I'm going to throw at people. And I think they enjoy it. I think they really enjoy it. Again, I would say that the group that I coach, at least in particular, I think they would rather go fast than have a recovery workout.
So, sort of going into my last question here, just to finish things off. So, the women's team has now won 3 team titles in a row, and going into a potential 4th run at an NCAA championship. It's no longer. I think I read somewhere like your first year, you're calling them like the disruptors, like they're like coming in, changing the game, and surprising people. But now they come in like sort of the equivalent of being in lane 4 in a final. Like you've got the hot hand, you've got the target on your back, Is there anything different in your preparation or in your mentality as you train the team heading into the season?
I wouldn't say there's anything different from in the preparation, or the mentality for that matter. I do think that, as you win, obviously the pressure, even after winning the first one, the pressure builds, right? And it builds and builds and builds. I've talked to the team, I talked to them about this last year, and I'll probably use it again this year, that like, the pressure that they've earned the pressure. They've won 3 national championships in a row. So it's not, the pressure isn't something to be scared of. It's something to be proud of. They've earned that. They've earned the ability to say they're 3-time national champs and they're going for their fourth. It sounds cliche and cheesy, but like the whole quote of pressure is a privilege. I mean, it is. It's a privilege to be in that position. I think there are a lot of teams, like it's not a position to be scared of. It's not a position to shy away from, because every other team in the country guaranteed wishes they were in that position, right? Like everybody would love to win 1 national title, let alone 3. And it's like, it's a fantastic place to be in. And, like, who knows where we'll end up this year, next year, in 5 years, or in 10 years. But, at this point, they've done the work to put themselves in that position, and it's an honor. It's an honor to be in that position, and they should enjoy it, and not look at it as pressure, like not look at it as a bad thing, but look at it as a good thing. Like, they'd rather be in this position than be in a position of not having won and trying to win. I look at it as a real positive. It's something that's really exciting, and something that you can just continue to build on, and just enjoy it as much as you can.
I think that's a pretty like mature and positive way to look at things. Is like I feel like a lesser coach in I don't want to say a lesser team, because like every team obviously has a lot to bring to the table, but people with, I guess, less maturity, that also sounds mean. They might look at it as like, oh, this is a lot of pressure. Oh, this is like, we should be worried about this. But instead being able to look at it as, this is a pretty cool situation that we're in, that we even have to deal with this amount of pressure, and how can we use this to motivate the team and get better? It's a pretty like positive way to look at things.
Mature, that's one thing that nobody's ever called me. I think that most of my swimmers and the rest of my coaching staff would not say that I'm very mature.
I think it's possible to be both mature and silly at the same time. You can ride the line between the two.
I definitely probably do that. That's for sure.
All right, well, that's a perfect place to leave things off. I am so sorry we went like 20 minutes over what I told you.
All good. No worries. I enjoyed it.